Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to a Transfer Market Metrics special. Ladies and gents, what a window it has been so far for the Reds. Wirtz has arrived, Frimpong, Kirkes, there are players galore. There's players that are going to improve the first team through the door. And yet, out of everything that's going on, you feel this is going to run all summer. That number 9, the striker position. Darwin Núñez needs to depart. Who will be coming in? And we're here not only to look at the runners and riders, we're here to rank them, challenge things, and see what we reckon. Now, Bart, I gave you a bit of a, unenviable task, is it fair to say, when analysing these three? Is some bits easier than others? Is that right?
Yeah. I think because we're trying to move to a point where we look at the whole package, right? I think that's a fair, because it's not as easy as saying this guy is clearly the best player, right? Because I actually think the player that both of us would want isn't on this list, just to put that out there. But so yeah, it was a bit hard because each one's got a little red flag that impacts your decision on which one you would have. So yeah, it's not an easy decision. Although I'm sure many will be like, no, it's clearly that guy. I'm like, cool, that's your opinion. But if you look at the whole thing, each one's got an up and a down.
There are pros and cons. And as my 17-year-old niece told me the other day when she was talking about dating a boy, she identified red flags. And I'm not going to be funny, there might be a few red flags in some of these as well. So if you can see it on the screen, or if not, ladies and gents, these are the names, aren't they? As Florian Plettenberg tweeted the other day, 3 number 9s Liverpool are focusing on: Hugo Ekitike, Alexander Isak, and Victor Osimhen. And they seem to have been the 3 names that just won't go away. Unfortunately, one that has, as Bart's alluded to, is Julian Alvarez. I think a lot of us would have liked him, but that does seem to be on or off the docket. Even Fabrizio Romano tweeted sort of in the early hours of this morning, or was it yesterday, trying to work out where we are, about Liverpool are keeping tabs on Hugo Ekitike and trying to work out if he will be the move. But if it is, it will have to work late. And I've given Bart's a bit of an unenviable challenge, and I'm going to prod and probe him on some of these. And I'm still not sure if anyone was to do the same to me, in all honesty. But with the 3 on screen, Osimhen, Ekitike, Isak, ranking them 3rd through to 1st in terms of which one we think Liverpool should be going for, and being clear on the full rationale and the red flags involved. And just for the reference, the chat panel, we're all going to disagree on this, probably up to a point. So we'll see what comes with this. But without further ado, and maybe to surprise some people, Hugo Ekitike is on the screen right now, Bart. Is he your bronze medal position as we sit?
As we sit now, yes. I think bronze and silver are quite close for me, as we'll go through the rationale. But for the moment, Ekitike is in the bottom position. If we do some performance stuff, and then we can look at the injuries, and then we can look at the package, right? I think that's a fair way forward, all 3. I think that's fair. Performance-wise, we've done this guy before. We've done it very recently, so I'm not going to go massively in depth, but we'll compare him to compare him to Isak, right? So if you look at his from an overall, you think, there's not a lot of difference there, right? You know, there isn't a lot of difference on the wagon wheels, apart from Isak he's got higher non-penalty goals, and he's got some progressive passes that are better. All right. And if you look at his typical F brief, TK has between the boxes, the only ones that aren't in the 90ths are progressive passes, pass completion, and passes attempted. But they're still in a range that we would expect from a forward. 70% pass completion for a forward, for us, in those positions, taking the risk is something we've chatted before about Moby. Diaz has been like, so it's not something you go, oh God, that's really bad. It's just is in and around. The stuff that's really interesting is progressive carries at 96th percentile. Yeah, take-ons, touches in the penalty box at 94th percentile. Progressive passes received, which means he's on the end of the good balls from the back. These are good things. The other bits to note of would be attacking wise. You have shots total, he's a 93rd percentile. Non-penalty goals is slightly down, which when we look at his with some of his other profile stats, that's probably one of the areas that you and I have discussed before about his actual ability to put the ball in the net is probably something which is a slight red flag, but everything else attacking wise is in a 90 or above percentile. Shot credits and actions, assists, those kind of things. Defensively, interceptions is his thing. Everything else is a grey or red, which is something that would need to be improved upon. But to be fair, I think we could say the same thing about all three of these options. The off-ball elements are things that our coaching setup will need to be looking at. Interestingly, when you compare him, it is forward similar. You've got Dembele's at top. You've got a friend there, Isak down at 7th. You've got Thuram. He's got Jota as well. So he's in that kind of mould of player, should we say. Just going through some of his body stats. I'll come back to that in a minute. But performance-wise, what I mean by the threat kind of areas that he generates are in the sort of left half space and the left wide drifting in. So that's not too similar to some other players we have, but it's not, it's okay. If we look at where he is receiving the ball, or in terms of his touch map, he is largely in zone 14 or in the box. And again, he does off drift out to that left half space. So those are his sort of positional elements. He's higher up the pitch than we're used to seeing Jota and Núñez, right? So that's a big tick. And again, I think you might see that profile for all three of these nines. All right, that's an improvement that the team are looking to do. In terms of involvement in threat production, for this particular game we looked at, it was just below 8% of the team's EPB. So it's not high, but it's not like low. Is he involved in the pass networks? Yes, some strong passes from the central areas. That's good. And some links with the wide. So he's not involved in play, right? He is involved in play, which is something that when we looked at Gyökeres, for example, he wasn't really involved with an overall network, okay? Looking at his zone 14 and wide passes, again, the left side dominant even is coming through on those areas. Off the ball, just to sign that one off, he's not really involved. I've been honest with you, he's so low that he's not really forming a shape. You're like, this is his shape here, which is a dot, right? So that would be a slight red flag for a TK, okay, for his off the ball element and his performance side of it. If we look at where he is in terms of this is our old favourite understat, which we'll do for free. This season he's finished 8 goals under what he should have done. Yeah. So he scored 15, should have scored 23. Assists, he's bang on, right? So he should have got assisted 7.5 goals, he assisted 8. All right. So there's some, you can get into depth with it per 90, 0.79 and 0.78. So, but he's underperformed by a bit. He's improved that because at one point he was double figures under, but he's improved slightly, all right? And then the other element to look at is injury wise. So 3 seasons worth of data. First season in playing football in the top level, probably 14 games missed. All right. The days isn't really that important. You can get some really misleading data. It's about how many games the guy actually missed, right? So 14 his first season and then 1 and 1. So he's fairly robust injuries wise. So that's a big tick for him. He's young. He could be profiled. I think you've got the details on his package, but I think you were saying, what was it, about 70 million once you change to euros? Is that about right for a transfer fee?
Yeah, there's been reports that Eintracht Frankfurt and Marcus Kroger weren't going to budge off 100 million euros, but there have been a number of reports that later in the window it goes, they would be looking down at sort of 90 million euros. So you're working down towards the 70 million mark, aren't you, when you get euros in Tesco around there?
That's not a bad, that's a high price point, should we say, for a kid of his age, but it's not. But you look at the wages. I mean, I've pitched him at around a Diaz level or Diaz Jota, which I think is about 120 a week or something. I'd say 120 a week, which is about 6 million a year. All right. So what you're paying out in wages, what you're paying out in fee, you're saving on wages considerably compared to the others. So in terms of that package and his injury package, there's some ticks there, right? The high transfer fee-ish, not as high as Isak, but it's fairly high for a kid. You're not paying out a lot of wages. You can incentivize it, the hell out of it, in terms of, right, we'll give you more money if you score goals, yada, 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 and it's got low injuries. Performance, apart from that XG conversion into goals, where it's fair to say he has underperformed, there are other elements, assists, his areas around the box, his touches, exactly where we want it to be. He's involved in the pass networks and build up. There's some positives there, right? Off the ball, though, that would be an area of things that we've said before we would have to work on. So defensively and the fee are probably a couple of ready, should we say. And for me, that's why I put him third, because I could see him as need a bit of work to get his on the ball stuff up to where we need to do to convert that 800 to being par. I don't want him to overperform. I just want him to be par. And then the off ball stuff would probably need a bit of coaching. So that's why I rationally, in my head, put him at a third in those three.
I can get that. I can understand that. And I suppose there's a few things just to expand on with having him third. Ultimately, and obviously from what you've said, he does actually have the shortest career for obvious reasons. He's only 22. But the best injury record, as in, if you were to stack it just on an injury ratio, yes, I know we had the first bit in France, but since he's gone to Eintracht Frankfurt, as you said, we've only missed one game in each season. So that does stack him higher than Isak and Osimhen in terms of the injury point of view. But you almost don't want to be harsh, because the kid has promise. You can't dispute that.
100%.
But the two things that stood out for me, as you've always said with the statistics, Bundesliga, it's 0.16 off, isn't it? It's 84% against the Premier League. You've got to build that into the metrics. And just at brass tacks as well, consider we've got Alisson, Salah, Van Dijk with 2 years who have to win now. He doesn't bring you it right now like the other two do. Is that just a fair and honest assessment?
I think that's absolutely spot on. The Buddy thing is probably makes this conversion potentially even worse. Because if you take that into account, in the Premier League, that might be an even worse conversion. It could go the other way as well, but it could be even more. But I think it's spot on. We've got 2 years. We've just paid. Let's just round stuff up. We've just given £100 million worth of wages out on Van Dijk and Mo Salah over the next 2 years. We want to win stuff with that, right? So, and with Ali, who's on whatever he is on. That's why for me, I'm not sure, given you spent what you spent on Birch, you've got two fullbacks coming in who are exciting, promising player. I think to sign a project player, maybe that's a bit harsh, but you know what I'm saying, right? Someone who isn't guaranteed to do what you need to do in the 9, I think would be a little bit, that's why I put him third. I don't think that matches the profile of the rest of the signings.
No, it doesn't. And I get people will say that the kid's rapid. We know about his pace. I think over 35 km/h on the Bundesliga, the young promise. And actually, out of them all right now, very strange to say, probably more of an FSG signing, would you say, when people talk about Moneyball and value? He does actually feel, even though we've both got him comfortably third, as the one that could retain his value in the near future. Out of them all, realistically, but that doesn't cover now, does it?
No, it doesn't cover now. I think if you look at like the outlay they've put on, though, they're going to extend Alisson, aren't they? They've got an option to go another year. You've just paid out on those three alone. There's no resale. You're basically going right 3 years, boom or bust. And I just, this guy probably would, because if you can fix his problems, which are fixable because he's a kid, right? You could have massive outlay. It's just not going to be next season, I don't think.
Yeah, and the differential in the Bundesliga, it's an easy call for me, actually. It doesn't mean he's a bad player.
No. He's a good player.
I still have almost the feeling that when the Isak stuff goes tits up, he might be the one they turn to. But we will see. We've put him third in our rankings, which then leads us to a fascinating player that people have got such mixed views on. Victor Osimhen, Galatasaray last season on loan from Napoli. It's important to say suggestions of the release clause, but also various reports say he only has a year left to go on his deal. The oldest of all the three at 26 years old. We'll throw in AFCON right now as a statement, Bart, because someone is going to, just to save people time in what they're doing. Yes, we will have a good breakdown of his injury record to save your agent on that chat panel as well. But there you go. That was me kicking out my battery pack. Just I was in full flow, and I thought I'd made a great point as well about Victor Osimhen. So apologies for that, ladies and gents. But oldest goals.
Yeah.
We'll get to the wage bit chat as well. But I suppose we've got to justify why Victor Osimhen is the silver medal position.
I think so. I started to say, look, if you look at comparing him to Isak again, because we did that for TK, he's a different player, right, for a start, but he outperforms Isak considerably on aerials, on non-penalty goals, on shot creating actions and non-penalty goals and assists, right? So whereas Ekitike was in and around, and if you took the bully league differential in, it would probably bring it underneath, right? Osimhen outperforms Isak on some of the key stuff, like putting the ball in the back of the net. He outperforms it, right? Yes, it was Turkey, and there's a differential for that as well, which I think is actually worse than bully. So yeah, there's some things to take into account there. But if you look at his overall, so defensively, he's a bit of a mixed bag. He does win you a lot of aerials, which, considering some of the other pods we've done, we've started to make the team small. You could do with adding a bit of height, someone who can help you out with that, right?
He's good in the air. Yeah.
He's good in the air, right? 91st percentile. Interceptions, the same as Ekitike. That's kind of what he does. He doesn't do the other stuff. All right? That's just to put it out, like he's in line with Ekitike for that. In between the boxes, remember Ekitike was all mostly green. He had above 90 for a lot. Osimhen touches the penalty box, 99th percentile. So you can't get much higher than that. He's in the box when you want him to be. Tax players on at 78th percentile. Progressive carries at 82nd percentile. But everything else is kind of, passes attempted, basically doesn't pass the ball. Pass completion 68%, which I know we have a lower threshold for our forwards, but that's still on the low end for our forwards. All right. That's like Nunes on a bad game. Progressive passes 10, not attempting them. All right. And then we have progressive passes received. So is he receiving them? It's a little bit lower rate. If we look at what he does in the box, and this is probably a key thing to look at. So the assists are down, so they are less than Ekitike's at 65th percentile. But the rest in terms of non-penalty goals, 95th percentile. So remember, Ekitike's was in the 70th. This guy's in the 95th. Non-penalty goals, 99th percentile. Yeah. So these are the key things. Shots total, 99th percentile. It's over 7 a game. Yeah. These are stuff that when you think about your thing about we've got to win for the next 2 years, you can't afford to be doing that, right? Taking your shots, doing it. Just to be fair, who does he compare with in terms of F-Brief? They've got Haaland in there. They've got they've got Jota again, and they've got Watkins. So that's kind of some names that people might be aware of. If you look at the minutes he's played last season, he clocked in just under 2,500. Okay, so it's just in domestic leagues, not including Europe. So there's some bits to go on that. All right. If you look at his performance stuff, so Passing, again, he's involved. Okay, it's not. He's not as high as a TK, but he is involved. He's not involved as much in the half spaces of 14 in terms of passing, which is annoying, but that's where he is. In terms of percentage of threat that is part of how he helps the team out, he's lower than a TK. He's less than 2% of his actions create threat for his teammates, right? So that's lower than a TK. TK was nearly 8, 9. And that will show you in his threat production. It's just, it's not great. Off the ball, it's low enough to not even give you a figure. But he does cover a lot of ground. So that whereas a TK was a really small zone off the ball, Osimhen is a high amount, but there's not a lot of actions going on there. If you know what I mean? So he's doing a lot of running, so he might need some help with that. And the key thing that people will be shouting, they always do, whenever they talk about Osimhen, isn't it? It's always injuries.
Yeah.
Right? And if we look at games missed, right, his average for the last 3 seasons is 11 games missed per season, which is a lot. I'm not going to knock that, right? That's not, that's not something you want to see. But last season, he only missed 77 games. The season before that was 15 and 11. So he's had the highest he's had is 24, which was nearly 5 years ago. So it's come down. It would be interesting to see if our guys could manage that. Bearing in mind, Kanate was coming up a season and missing a lot of games, and he apart from some guy landing on his shoulder, he did pretty well for the whole season, right? So, it's still a red flag for me, though. 11 games is a lot, and for someone who's in and around the 3,000 minute mark, there's some gaps to fill, should we say? Now the Turkish league isn't in under stat. But if you look at his last season with Napoli, he was supposed to score 17 goals. He scored 15 in the league. Assists, he was supposed to assist 3.5. He assisted 3. So he was kind of bang on the numbers. Season before that, he was, again, pretty much bang on the numbers. Season before that, he scored a goal more than he should have done, right? Or goal and a half. So, but if you look at that consistently, for the last 4 years, he's been pretty much bang on what he should have scored and what he should have assisted. All right. Now the ratio is different. All right. He's scoring more or less assists, should we say, but he's bang on what he should be doing, i.e., big chance comes to him, and according to understat, he invariably takes that chance. Yeah. So that's something to put into the pot with it. You said to me he's in and around the 60 million. I know he's got a year left, so we could probably negotiate that down a bit in terms of a fee. But his wages, I think you said to me today, was what, 300 grand a week?
Yeah, this again, you're off reports and suggestions, but you have to remember as well, he turned down over 500,000 for Al Hilal. And yes, he wants to stay in Europe, but he's not going to be cheap, is he? He's going to be the highest wages out of the 3.
Yeah, and that if you took 300 grand a week, that's 16 million a year, right, a season. So that's a considerable jump up from Hugo, right? And it's actually more than Isak's asking for. So that's, for me, in between the boxes, he's not as good as the other 2. He's got an injury record which is worse than Hugo's. He's probably better in the box at the moment than Hugo. So performance tick. Off the ball, he's around the same as Hugo, probably a little bit worse. And his wages are a little bit worse. But that win now attitude that I think the players are kind of in that mindset, as the stats kind of bear out, he largely performs in line with his XG and his XA for the seasons, which I think if you want to get someone to win now, that's kind of what you need.
I suppose there's a few bits on that I want to explore a bit more because, like you said, I mean, the Turkish league, I'm not saying it doesn't count. I don't want to be harsh on that. No, I know he's got 26 goals, but he got 6 in Europa, so 32 in all competitions this season. Even before, though, 23-24, when it suggested he started to have the problems with Napoli and the various rows, all the things that no one's quite certain about, he still got 15 goals, as you mentioned, in Serie A, and a couple in the Champions League. So that's 17. And of course, the season before, that famous 22-23, when Napoli were all conquering, obviously he gets over 30 goals across all competitions. So he does have the pedigree. That's the first thing you've got to say, haven't you? Like, and the second bit, which always strikes me, is pretty much he's on his XG. He doesn't really indicate he's a hot and cold blower as we talk about, is it?
He's bang on. He's it's that kind of just being par is an undersold value to have as a forward, right? It's just if you just score the amount you're supposed to score, everyone's happy. You know what I mean? It's just but it's remarkably difficult to do.
Which with Salah and Wirtz in the team does make you think this boy would, or whoever would be getting chances galore. So even just par would probably be an outstanding amount as we want for now. The only thing is, I know you had it up early. If we just bring it up on the screen, because injuries are obviously, he's maybe the biggest red flag in terms of injuries. And people reference this because he had a broken cheekbone, which I always think collision injuries, as we know, impact injuries they talk about. It's hard to hold those against the player. Sometimes they're just unlucky in the way it can work.
Yeah.
But if you scroll up a bit on that screen, Bart, and I'm looking down, the word muscle comes up an awful lot, doesn't it, over the last 3 years?
Yeah. They're not contact injuries.
No.
They are, and they're also, you've got hamstring. You've got, these are not labelled because they probably don't want to give away the GDPR has changed.
Yeah.
I think when we looked at this a couple of years ago before the rule, and I think they rule like hamstring. So that's not what you want. You don't want your quick lads to have hamstring injuries. So that would be a concern of mine going forward. It's the type of injury rather than the amount as well. So yeah, that's another red flag. The last, as you say, contact injury you had was the collarbone, which was back in 21-22. But after that, it's all been either a fever or fitness randomly. I've never seen that one. And then it's just muscular injury. So yeah, it's that is a bit of a worry for me.
That is the dossier, I suppose, on there. And yeah, obviously wages. And listen, people, I know the chat panel's going, we can debate this all day about AFCON, whether that sways it. But the reason why we're putting Osimhen over Ekitike is a win now attitude, the context of the team, where we are. And yes, I know we'd lose him and Mo in January, but Christ, we'll be miles ahead with them two just there and then coming back as well. So we'll bring that into the mix. That is why Victor Osimhen gets silver. But Liverpool have got one gold medal in Florian Wirtz this summer. And there is absolutely zero doubt this man is the top target. And this just seems to rumble on with Newcastle not being able to sign anyone, any attacking players, all the suggestions that we've had as well at Anfield Index. The player wants to come to Liverpool. And that's not belittling Newcastle. That's just if he wants to win now. It's pretty simple how he does that. It does feel now as well, Bart, because he will be 26 soon enough at the same time. He was in the Player of the Year contest. We have got Alexander Isak as the gold medal #1. That doesn't mean he's without red flags, which we've got to talk about. But we've got to say, why is he clear #1 for us?
I think age is spot on. He's nearly 26, right? That's like right in that wheelhouse, isn't it? 24 to 28. If we could have gotten nearer to 24, which I think we looked at him actually as a club a while ago. So yeah, but good age. This is his last big contract. I think that's probably fair to say. If he signs a 5-year deal with us, this is it, right? Yeah. So he's good age. He's played in the Premier League. But what did we say about Marco Gay the other day, right? He's literally Premier League. He knows the league, right? That is a big thing to have. Comparing him to Jota here. Jota. He's in and around similar to Jota, but Jota does better off the ball, which we'll come on to. And we've already looked at him in terms of the other two. So there were some things that straight away he'll give you that the others won't. All right. If you look at his boxes. Defensively, I think he's showing up there. Is I would say with Osimhen, he had the interceptions being high. TK had, I think, had blocks and interceptions high. Yeah. Isak's got none of those, right? So he off the ball is potentially the worst of the three. All right. And I'm not saying he can't defend, but it's just not showing up in the percentiles. All right. Between the boxes, though, this is a lot more like, you remember TK was green, 90th percentile. So Isak here, take-ons, carries are in the 90th. He's got good passing for a forward. Yeah. 77 percentile, passes attempted 70%, progressive passing received 88, touches in the penalty box 86. These are good numbers, right? So Osimhen was in the 90th for his touches in the box, but hardly anything else in the green. The key stuff in the box, so non-penalty goals, 88 percentile. So better than Hugo, not quite as good as Osimhen, but still, there you are. Non-penalty, 85th. Taking shots, so he's at 79. So that's 3 a game. That's above the 2. It's a good number to have. Shot creating actions, 84. So that's 3 a game. All right. So there is that's a good set, and we don't have to convert because he's in the Premier League, right? So that they are the metrics we're comparing him like for like. Yeah. Who's he compared to? Harry Kane, TK, funnily enough, Mbappe, some lad at Real Madrid, I don't know where you've heard of him. But yeah, there's some players there, all right? If we scroll down to his minutes, which is important. So these are just league minutes, which is something to look at. And I think he steadily improved his minutes, right? When he first came to the Premier League, he was 1-2. 2-2, he's got up to 2-7. If you add on non-league, he's in and around the 3,000 mark, right? So he's in and around a good figure for us. He's not hitting the 5,000 of Mo and BBD, but I think we've lost count the number of times we say the unicorn players, right? They just play week in, week out, and the bust. Touch wood, right? Touch wood. So that's from that side of things. If you look at what the stuff that I would put off for him, is he involved in the passing networks? Yes, he's involved in play. He's involved in certain areas, not as much. He's inconsistent, but Newcastle play a different way to some of the other teams. Remember that they can play a bit on the counter. They can play differently. If we look at his involvement in 14 and a half spaces in terms of passes, this is very similar to Osimhen, so not as good as TK, and about the same as Osimhen. So that's kind of where he is passing wise. In terms of how much threat does he give, it's more than Osimhen, not as much as a TK. Okay. Yeah. Pass success in this particular game, 82%, which is pretty good, to be honest with you. Threat, whereas TK was over the left half space and in the 9, Isak is in the right half space and in the box. So it's sort of the other side. So you could see maybe Duftani and Mo. I don't know. Could work that way. But he's showing up, whereas Osimhen wasn't really showing up on the threat map, right? Off the ball, not a lie to you, pretty low figures to even get you some. And if you look at his zones on here, he's not done enough to even get you a zone, all right? Whereas at least TK had a little dot. Osimhen had an area to work in, but in this particular game, Isak hasn't done enough to even get an area. XG, we all know he can do the stuff in there, and his shots are in and around the box, which is what you want. Now, the big thing, this is on the stat, how's he performing in relation to XG? So we just said Osimhen pretty much bang on for the last 3 seasons. Yeah. Isak, sorry. So first season in the Premier League comes in at 1 and a bit over. Right, so overperforms his XG, underperforms his assists. Second season, underperforms by 1. So should have scored 22 goals, scored 21. I'll take that, to be honest with you. Assists, should have assisted 3 and a bit, assisted 3. So I pretty much bang on for assists. This season, pretty much bang on. Goals 23, should have scored 22. Assists should have been 5 and a bit, assisted 6. So he's improved to be pretty much par or slightly above for the last 3 seasons in the Premier League, which is something to think about. That when we're talking about our win now attitude, he does that. Yeah. And because people will be shouting at you if you don't mention it, his injuries.
Yeah.
These are his injuries, right? So he does miss the most games on average, it's fair to say. He's 13 games a season for the past three seasons, right? So you can't shy away from that, but it has improved. Yeah, when he first signed for Newcastle, it was 18 games, and that's a combination, because I think he signed in January, whatever it was. So there's a bit of a half in there. He then missed 12 games, which is their first season in the Champions League back.
Yeah.
And the whole squad suffered with a load of injuries because they've never played 2 games a week. So they were struggling with how you do that.
Yeah.
Last season, 9 games. So, and if you look at the injuries, he's got a hamstring, he's got groin, broken toe, can't really do a lot about it. He's got groin, he's got a hammy. So there's a mixture of injury-related issues, which could come back to a knee injury back here, but I don't know the extent of that knee injury. It didn't look that bad to him. Missed 4 games. So performance-wise, no Premier League conversion because he's in the Premier League. He's been pretty much on par with his XG or above for the last 3 seasons, and the same for assists. Yeah. Off the ball, still the same red flag as Osimhen, all right, and the same as the TK. On the ball threat, better than Osimhen, not as good as a TK, but performance-wise in terms of actually scoring, probably as good as Osimhen. Package-wise, I think they're looking for 120, 130 million fee up front.
Suggestions, yeah.
What we're trying to do. And wages, I think you said 220 grand a week, which is about 12 million a season, right? So it's a better package than we would have to lay out for Osimhen, because the per week is less. I mean, 12 versus 16 is a considerable saving. But this is the most expensive fee we'd have to outlay. Yeah. We might be able to offset that, as I think, if we sell a couple of players, that might offset it. So for me, in terms of there's no conversion to Premier League, he's as injury prone, and I hate that word, but he's missed as many games as Osimhen, to be fair, give or take, in the last 3 seasons. He's on par in terms of his finishing and his assisting, as where he should be, and he's less wages. So that's why, for me, he's number 1.
Ben, I suppose a few bits on that, and I agree with all of that. I mean, there's no AFCON for him as well at the same time, so against Osimhen, that tips the balance. Injuries keeps getting levelled at Isak, and listen, there's no way me and you can be hypocritical and say there's not a concern when you're laying out potentially, if it comes through, 120 to 130 million for a player that's missed games. That's just a complete lie. But with that being said, and you mentioned it there for everyone that's listening or watching, it's fair to say his injury or games missed is going one way. What I mean by that is 22-23, 18 missed, 23-24, 12. Last season, 9. Now, Liverpool will also bank on the fact with Ruben Peters doing his magic and the way they manage injuries, they can actually get that down. And I'm just being dead blunt and dead frank now, considering Liverpool with the Premier League, the Champions League and all competitions play, call it 50 games or more a season. Someone will be able to tell us exact. If someone said, you're getting Isak for 41 out of the 50 games, I reckon Arne Slot and his team would take that probably, wouldn't they?
Well, I think you're right, because you'd get a player that would finish, that would give you what you want. If you get a player that gives you what you want for 40 games, I think you win the league. To be completely blunt with you, I think you win the league and you go pretty far in Champions League. And the rest of the games that you don't play, you work it out. It's that simple, really. And I think that's for 2 seasons, as we talk about. I don't think you can find, you probably could find a better option, but right here, right now, in terms of fees and the rest of it, I think for that simple fact to give you 40 quality games, I think this is why I think the club are seriously considering making a bid of 120 million.
Yeah, I think just when we stack it up, as you said, Premier League proven as opposed to the other 2. It does also, we should say, with the fact he is 25 and nearly 26, I know we talk about FSG signings. It is now or never, isn't it, for want of a better word, in the Elvis line. If they don't do it this summer, I know people keep saying they could come back next year, but he'll be 26, nearly 27. It does feel like with only a year left to go, the boat may have just moved for others.
Yeah, I think you're right. And also, Hugo might have improved then. To say Hugo stays where he is and he actually levels out his performance, then they might go, do you know what? That 100 million we're going to spend on Isak last summer, we'll just go and spend it on Hugo. And then you've got him for 5 years and maybe a bit more. And he's giving you the performance you want. Whereas I think if you don't get this guy now, I don't think we get him personally.
Which, we still got to say it will probably be an incredibly difficult deal to do. Yeah. And I think like me and others, many are not convinced we can actually do it. But we will see what Messrs Hughes and Ward pull out. But there we go, ladies and gents. Ekitike doesn't mean he's a bad player, but for all those reasons mentioned, third in the rankings. Osimhen, a top quality silver medalist. And for now, and needing to win now, we wouldn't be too sad with that at all. But despite any red flags around injuries and other bits off the ball, if Liverpool want the best option we think they could possibly get, and maybe possibly is stretching it, Alexander Isak is the man for that. It is gold for Isak, silver for Osimhen, bronze for Ekitike. We will see if any of them arrives on the podium there at the AXA. All it leaves me to say is ever is Bart, for the time, the analysis, the insight, for ranking them that way. It is much appreciated.
No worries, anytime.
And ladies and gents, that was another Transfer Market Metrics special for Anfield.